My name is David. There are moments in life that seem completely ordinary at first. One evening, one unexpected conversation, one simple introduction. You never imagine that a single moment can completely change the course of your future. That's exactly what happened to me. When I first saw Riley, I thought it would just be another fun night that I'd forget within a few days. I had no idea that the woman smiling across the room would become the love of my life. I also couldn't imagine that years later, our wedding would be ruined, our relationship fall apart, and we'd have to fight our way back to each other. Everything began in the summer of 2018 in Austin, Texas. At the time, I was 28 years old and worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing agency. I enjoyed my job, had a comfortable apartment, good friends, and a routine that rarely changed. Most weekdays were spent at work, while weekends were filled with basketball games, backyard barbecues, or the occasional road trip. My friends often joked that I was the last bachelor left in our group. One by one, they had all gotten married or were engaged. Whenever we met, the conversation somehow turned into stories about weddings, mortgages, or babies. "You're next," Michael would always say. I would laugh and shake my head. Not unless I meet someone worth changing my life for. At the time, I honestly believed that finding the right person was mostly luck. I had dated before, but none of those relationships had lasted. Some ended because we wanted different things. Others simply faded away. I wasn't looking for love anymore. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Everything changed on a warm Saturday afternoon. My best friend, Michael, called me. "We'll have to come to a party tonight." "A party?" I asked. "Yeah, my cousin rented a lake house outside Austin. There'll be food, music, and a lot of people. It'll be fun." I smiled. You know, crowds aren't really my thing. I know, but trust me, just this once. After a few seconds of silence, I sighed. "Fine. But if it's boring, I'm blaming you." Michael laughed. "It won't be boring. I promise." Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had stayed home that night. Would I have ever met Riley? Would our lives have crossed another way? I'll never know. Around 7 that evening, I arrived at the lake house. The place looked beautiful. String lights hung from the trees, country music played through outdoor speakers, and dozens of people were talking, laughing, swimming, and enjoying the warm Texas evening. Michael greeted me with a hug before disappearing to introduce himself to someone else. I grabbed a glass of lemonade and stood near the patio, watching the sunset reflect across the lake. That's when I noticed her. She was standing near the fire pit with a few friends. She wasn't the loudest person there. She wasn't trying to get everyone's attention. But somehow, she already had mine. She wore a simple blue summer dress, and every few seconds she smiled at something one of her friends said. Her smile felt genuine, the kind that made other people smile too. Michael suddenly appeared beside me. "I see you've found Riley." "So that's her name?" He nodded. "She's one of my cousin's friends, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet." Before I could answer, someone accidentally bumped into Riley. She lost her balance and stepped backward. Right into me. My lemonade splashed across the front of my shirt. Her eyes widened in horror. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." For a second, we stared at each other. Then I laughed. "I guess this is a memorable way to meet someone." She covered her face, embarrassed. "I swear I'm usually not this clumsy." "That's good to hear." She laughed. It was impossible not to laugh with her. "I'm Riley." She held out her hand. "I'm David. It's really nice to meet you even if I ruined your shirt. I've survived worse." She smiled. "I owe you another drink. I'd like that." A few minutes later, we were sitting on the dock overlooking the lake. The conversation flowed naturally. We talked about work. She was an elementary school teacher and absolutely loved what she did. "The kids drive me crazy sometimes," she admitted, laughing. "But I can't imagine doing anything else." I admired that. Most people worked only for a paycheck. Riley genuinely cared about making a difference. She asked about my job, and I told her about the advertising projects I worked on. Then we started talking about family, travel, favorite books, music, childhood memories. Hours passed so quickly that neither of us noticed the party becoming quieter around us. At one point, Riley looked out across the water. I've always loved places like this. Why? They remind me to slow down. I smiled. I probably need that reminder too. For a brief moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, as if we'd known each other much longer than a few hours. Eventually, Michael walked over with a grin on his face. So, you two have been talking all night. Riley laughed. I guess we have. Michael looked at me. I'll leave you alone. As he walked away, Riley shook her head. Your friend isn't exactly subtle. No. He thinks he's helping. I think he is. She smiled. So do I. My heart skipped a beat. I knew I didn't want the night to end. I took a deep breath. Riley? Yeah? Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? She looked at me for a few seconds before smiling. I was hoping you'd ask. Really? I was starting to think you'd never do it. I laughed. So, is that a yes? It's definitely a yes. We exchanged phone numbers. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't stop smiling. I hadn't felt that happy in years. For the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where life might take me. But while I was thinking about Riley, someone else was watching us. Standing near the porch was a young woman with dark brown hair. She had been with Riley earlier that evening. Our eyes met for only a second. She quickly looked away. When I asked Michael who she was, he answered casually. Oh, that's Emily. She's Riley's best friend. They've known each other since high school. I nodded. She seemed quiet, maybe even a little shy. At least, that's what I thought. What I didn't know was that Emily had been watching Riley and me for most of the evening, and judging by the look on her face, she wasn't happy. At the time, I ignored it. After all, why would Riley's best friend have a problem with me? I had no idea that Emily was already beginning to feel something she couldn't control. Jealousy. And before our story was over, that jealousy would nearly destroy the future Riley and I dreamed of together. The morning after the party, I woke up earlier than usual. For a few seconds, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the previous night in my mind. Riley's laugh. The conversation by the lake. The way she smiled when I asked her out. It all felt almost too good to be true. I reached for my phone, hoping to see a message from her. Nothing. I laughed at myself. Easy, David, I said. You just met her. I made coffee, turned on the television, and tried to focus on a baseball game, but my attention kept drifting back to Riley. Just after noon, my phone buzzed. Riley, good morning. I hope your shirt survived last night. A smile spread across my face, me. It survived, but I think it deserves an honorable retirement. A few seconds later, she replied with a laughing emoji. For the rest of the afternoon, we texted almost nonstop. We talked about our favorite restaurants, childhood memories, music, and places we wanted to visit someday. Talking to her felt effortless. There were no awkward pauses, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. For the first time in years, I felt like someone truly understood me. 3 days later, we had our first official date. I picked her up just before sunset. She opened the front door wearing a simple white dress, and for a moment, I forgot what I was about to say. You look amazing, I finally managed. She smiled. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. I laughed. I've been practicing. Dinner lasted nearly 3 hours. The restaurant slowly emptied around us, but neither of us noticed. When we finally stepped outside, the warm Texas air felt perfect. I had a wonderful time, Riley said. So did I. There was a brief silence. Before I asked, Can I see you again? She smiled. I was hoping you'd ask that. From that moment on, every free moment together, sometimes we explored small towns outside Austin. Other weekends we packed a picnic and drove to Lake Travis. One Saturday, we rented kayaks. Riley challenged me to a race. If I win, she laughed, you have to buy dinner. And if I win, I'll still let you buy dinner. I laughed. That doesn't seem fair. It isn't. Halfway across the lake, she splashed water at me. Oh, you're going to regret that. She laughed even harder. A minute later, I splashed her back. Soon we were both soaked, laughing so hard that we nearly tipped our kayaks. When we reached the dock, an elderly couple sitting nearby smiled at us. The older man whispered loudly enough for us to hear, Those two are going to get married someday." Riley blushed. I smiled but said nothing. Deep inside, I hoped he was right. As the months passed, Riley became more than my girlfriend. She became my best friend. She celebrated my successes as if they were her own. When I had a difficult week at work, she surprised me with my favorite homemade lasagna. When she doubted herself after a hard day teaching, I reminded her how much her students loved her. We supported each other through everything. It felt easy, comfortable, real. About 6 months into our relationship, Riley invited me to dinner with a few of her closest friends. That's when I officially met Emily. She greeted me with a polite smile. "It's nice to finally meet you, David. You too." She seemed friendly enough. She joked with everyone at the table and asked me questions about my work. For a while, I thought my first impression of her at the party had been wrong, but then I started noticing little things. Whenever Riley reached for my hand, Emily quietly looked away. Whenever Riley talked about a trip we were planning together, Emily suddenly became silent. It was subtle, so subtle that no one else seemed to notice. Later that evening, Riley stepped away to answer a phone call from her mother. Emily looked at me. So, you seem pretty serious about Riley." "I am." She stared at her coffee for a moment. "Don't hurt her." "I never would." She nodded slowly. "I hope that's true." Before I could respond, Riley returned to the table. Emily smiled again, as if nothing had happened. The conversation continued normally. But something about that exchange stayed with me. Over the following weeks, Emily became a regular part of our lives. She and Riley had been best friends since high school. They talked almost every day. Sometimes Emily joined us for lunch or came over to Riley's apartment to help her decorate or cook dinner. She was always polite to me, always smiling. But occasionally, I caught her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't the kind of look someone gives a stranger. It was more complicated than that. I couldn't explain it. One evening, after Emily left Riley's apartment, I asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Has Emily always been protective of you?" Riley smiled. "Very. You two are really close. We've been through everything together." She paused. "Emily's had some terrible relationships. What happened? Every boyfriend she ever trusted cheated on her or left." I nodded. "That must have been hard." "It was. Maybe that's why she's cautious." Riley gently squeezed my hand. "She'll get used to us. She just needs time." I believed her, because Riley always saw the good in people. A few weeks later, we attended Emily's birthday party. Everything seemed normal, until Riley went inside to help prepare the cake. Emily walked over to me. "You make Riley very happy." "I hope so." She looked directly into my eyes. "You know what? If you ever break her heart," she smiled, "I'll never forgive you." I laughed, assuming she was joking. "I don't plan on breaking anyone's heart." For just a split second, her smile disappeared. Then Riley came back carrying the birthday cake. Emily immediately laughed and joined the others. The strange moment was over, or so I thought. Nearly a year had passed since Riley and I met. I couldn't imagine my life without her anymore. Every future plan I made included her. Every dream somehow led back to us. One afternoon, while we were walking through Zilker Park, Riley slipped her hand into mine. "I'm really happy," she whispered. "So am I." She looked up at me. "I've never loved anyone the way I love you." My heart nearly stopped. "I love you too." For the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I belonged. What I didn't know was that someone standing only a few steps outside our happiness was secretly wishing it would all fall apart. And before long, Emily would stop hiding her jealousy. She would begin acting on it. Almost 2 years had passed since Riley and I first met at that lake house. Sometimes I still laughed when I thought about the glass of lemonade she had spilled on my shirt. It was such a small accident, yet it had led to the greatest blessing of my life. By then, we knew each other better than anyone else. We had celebrated birthdays together, taken weekend trips across Texas, spent holidays with each other's families, and supported one another through every challenge life threw at us. There was never a moment when I questioned my feelings. I loved Riley with all my heart. One evening, after dropping her off at her apartment, I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes. I didn't turn on the engine. I simply smiled. That's when I realized something. I didn't just want Riley to be my girlfriend anymore. I wanted her to be my wife. The very next day I called Michael. I need your help. He laughed. You're finally going to do it, aren't you? Was it that obvious? David, you've been looking at engagement rings online for 3 months. You forgot to close the browser when I came over. I buried my face in my hands. I thought I was being careful. You weren't. So, will you help me? Of course. For the next few weeks, I secretly searched for the perfect engagement ring. I visited jewelry stores after work, comparing different styles. The salespeople kept asking about my budget, but honestly, the price wasn't what mattered most. I wanted something that reminded me of Riley. Simple, elegant, beautiful without trying too hard. When I finally found the ring, I knew immediately. The diamond sparkled in the light, but it wasn't flashy. It was perfect, just like her. As I walked out of the jewelry store with the small velvet box in my pocket, I couldn't stop smiling. There was no turning back now. The hardest part wasn't planning the proposal. It was keeping it a secret. Riley could read me better than anyone. Every time I smiled for no reason, she'd narrow her eyes. What are you hiding? Nothing. David, I promise. She crossed her arms. I don't believe you. I laughed. You'll find out soon enough. She shook her head. I definitely don't like surprises. That made me even more nervous. I decided to propose at Mount Bonnell. It was one of our favorite places in Austin. Whenever life became stressful, we'd drive there just before sunset and sit quietly, watching the city below. It had become our place. Fleet arrived early to make sure the overlook wasn't too crowded, and secretly planned to take pictures from a distance. No huge audience, no dramatic performance, just Riley and me. Exactly the way I wanted it. The evening finally arrived. On the drive there, my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. Riley noticed immediately. You seem nervous. Do I? A little. I'm fine. She smiled. You've been acting strange all week. I've just been busy. She laughed. I don't believe that for a second. Luckily, she didn't ask any more questions. When we reached the overlook, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and purple. The view was breathtaking. Riley leaned against the railing. I could stay here forever. I looked at her instead of the sunset. So could I. She turned toward me. What? Nothing. No, seriously. I smiled nervously. There is something. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the small velvet box. Her eyes grew wide. Before she could say a word, I knelt down on one knee. Riley, from the very first night we met, you've made every day of my life brighter. You've made me laugh when I wanted to give up. You've believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You've shown me what love really feels like. I don't want another day to pass without knowing that we'll spend the rest of our lives together. Will you marry me? Tears instantly filled her eyes. She covered her mouth with both hands. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she nodded, again and again. Finally, through happy tears, she whispered, yes. Then louder, yes, of course I will. I slipped the ring onto her finger. The moment it settled on her hand, she threw her arms around me. We both laughed. We both cried. People nearby began clapping. Someone shouted, congratulations, it was the happiest moment of my life. That evening, our families gathered at Riley's parents' house to celebrate. My parents hugged Riley as if she were already part of the family. Her father shook my hand before pulling me into a hug. Take good care of my daughter. I will. I know you will. The whole house was filled with laughter. Everyone talked about wedding dates, honeymoon destinations, and future plans. Everyone, except Emily. She congratulated us politely. She smiled when Riley showed everyone the engagement ring. But something felt different. Her smile disappeared the moment Riley looked away. Later that evening, I stepped outside for some fresh air. Emily was standing alone on the back porch. You okay? I asked. She nodded without looking at me. Just thinking. About what? She sighed. I guess everything's changing. It is. You two are really happy. We are. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something else. Instead, she simply forced another smile. "I'm happy for you." I thanked her and went back inside. I wanted to believe she meant it. Over the next few months, wedding planning took over our lives. Riley was excited about every detail. She spent hours looking at dresses online. Her mother helped choose flowers. I handled the music, the photographer, and the venue. Everything was coming together perfectly. Emily also became deeply involved in the planning. At first, I thought she was simply being a supportive best friend. She offered to help Riley with almost everything: the invitations, the decorations, the bridesmaids' dresses, the seating chart. Riley appreciated having someone she trusted by her side. I did too. But little by little, I noticed things that didn't feel right. Whenever Riley and I planned a date night, Emily suddenly needed her help with something important. If I surprised Riley with dinner, Emily somehow managed to call halfway through. She always had a reason, always an excuse. At first, it seemed like coincidence, but the coincidences never stopped. One afternoon, Michael pulled me aside. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you trust Emily?" I frowned. "I guess." He looked around before lowering his voice. "I don't." "Why?" "I've caught her watching you two." "So? Not like a friend?" I laughed nervously. "You're overthinking it." "I hope I am." He paused. "But if I'm wrong, great. And if you're right?" Michael looked me straight in the eyes. "Then someone is trying very hard to come between you and Riley." I didn't want to believe him. I told myself he had misunderstood, that Emily was just adjusting to the fact that her best friend was getting married. I had no idea that Michael was closer to the truth than either of us realized. And before our wedding day arrived, Emily would make the first move in a plan that nearly destroyed our future forever. As our wedding day drew closer forward, life became busier than ever. Riley and I were balancing work, meeting with vendors, tasting cakes, choosing flowers, and trying to find time for each other in between. Even though we were exhausted, we were happy. Every night before going to bed, we'd talk about our future. "What do you want our first house to look like?" Riley asked one evening. "I don't care how big it is." "No? As long as you're there, it'll feel like home." She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. "I can't wait to be your wife. I can't wait to call you my wife." At that moment, everything felt perfect. I wish it had stayed that way. Emily was helping Riley almost every day. She went dress shopping with her, helped organize the bridal shower, even volunteered to coordinate the bridesmaids on the wedding day. Everyone thought she was being an incredible friend, including me. But behind Riley's back, Emily was slowly putting her plan into motion. Riley called me. "David, can we talk?" "Of course." Her voice sounded different, cold. "Did you have lunch with someone today?" I frowned. "No, I ate at the office." There was a long silence. "Are you sure? Riley, what's going on?" She sighed. "Emily said she saw you having lunch with a blonde woman." I blinked in confusion. "What?" "She said you looked very close." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Riley, I haven't left the office all day." "I know. You know, I do." She paused. But hearing it still bothered me. I felt a knot form my stomach. For the first time since we'd met, someone had planted a seed of doubt. A few days later, something else happened. I had planned a surprise dinner for Riley. I'd booked a table at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. She texted me that morning. "I can't make it tonight. Emily needs me. She's having a really difficult day." I understood. Or at least I tried to. We rescheduled. Then it happened again and again. Every time Riley and I made plans, Emily somehow needed her. "It won't always be like this," Riley promised. I know. But secretly, I was beginning to miss the time we used to spend together. One evening, I stopped by Riley's apartment with flowers. Emily was already there. The moment she opened the door, she looked surprised. "Oh." I wanted to surprise Riley. "She's in the shower. I'll wait." Emily crossed her arms. "You know what? Wedding planning has been really stressful for her." "I know. Maybe she just needs a little space sometimes." I frowned. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing." She smiled politely. "I'm just looking out for my best friend." Before I could answer, Riley walked into the room. Her smile lit up when she saw me. "David," she hugged me tightly. The expression on Emily's face changed for only a second, but I noticed it. She looked disappointed. Over the next few weeks, strange little misunderstandings kept happening. Riley claimed she had sent me messages I never received. I texted her, but sometimes she insisted my replies never arrived. At first, we blamed our phones. Neither of us suspected someone else. One Saturday afternoon, I received a message from Riley. "I can't believe you'd say that to me." I stared at the screen. "What?" She answered after the second ring. "What did I say?" "You know exactly what." "No, I don't." She sounded hurt. "You texted me that maybe we're moving too fast." "I never sent that." There was silence. Then she read the message aloud. Every single word. I checked my phone. It wasn't there. "I swear, Riley, I don't understand. Can you send me a screenshot?" A few seconds later, it arrived. The message looked like it had come from my number, but I had never written it. Neither of us had any explanation. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it had to be some strange phone glitch. We wanted to believe that, because the alternative was too frightening. Emily continued pretending to be the perfect friend. She comforted Riley whenever she felt anxious. She smiled whenever I was around. She even told people how excited she was for our wedding. No one questioned her, no one except Michael. One afternoon, he asked me to meet him for coffee. The moment we sat down, he got straight to the point. "Something's wrong." "I know." "No." He leaned forward. "I mean really wrong." "What do you mean?" "I saw Emily yesterday." "So?" "She told someone your relationship probably wouldn't last." I stared at him. Why would she say that? "I don't know. But she didn't sound like someone making a guess." He paused. "She sounded like someone making a promise." Those words stayed with me all night. A week later, Riley seemed unusually distant. She smiled less. She answered my texts later than usual. When we talked, she often seemed distracted. Finally, I asked her, "Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "I don't know. What does that mean?" She looked down. "It feels like we've been arguing a lot lately. We've had misunderstandings." "I know, but it doesn't feel like us anymore." I reached for her hand. "We'll figure it out." She squeezed my fingers. "I hope so." Neither of us realized that every misunderstanding, every moment of doubt, every tiny crack appearing in our relationship had been carefully created by someone we both trusted. Only 3 weeks remained until our wedding. The invitations had been sent. The venue was fully decorated. The honeymoon was booked. Everything should have been perfect. Instead, for the first time since we fell in love, I went to bed wondering whether something was slipping away from us. And while Riley cried herself to sleep that same night, Emily sat alone in her apartment, smiling, because her plan was finally working. She believed that before the wedding day arrived, David and Riley would no longer trust each other. And once trust is gone, love becomes much easier to break. 3 weeks passed faster than either of us expected. From the outside, everything looked perfect. The wedding venue had been decorated with white roses and soft lights. The caterers had finalized the menu. The photographer had confirmed the schedule, and our families couldn't stop talking about how excited they were. But behind our smiles, something had changed. Riley and I still loved each other. I never doubted that. The problem was that we had slowly begun doubting everything else. Small misunderstandings had become arguments. Arguments had become long periods of silence. Neither of us understood why things suddenly felt so difficult. If only we had known someone was pulling the strings behind our backs. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous about getting married. I couldn't wait to marry Riley. I was worried because I felt the distance growing between us. I stared at my phone for almost an hour before sending her a message. "Tomorrow, no matter what happens, I love you." She replied a few minutes later. "I love you too." Reading those 4 words gave me hope. I told myself everything would be fine once we saw each other at the ceremony. I couldn't have been more wrong. The morning of the wedding arrived. The venue looked even more beautiful than I had imagined. Rows of white chairs faced a flower-covered arch overlooking the lake. Family members hugged one another as they arrived. Friends laughed while taking pictures. Michael adjusted my tie. You okay? I smiled nervously. I'm about to marry the woman I love. He grinned. Best day of your life. I hope so. Meanwhile, Riley was getting ready in the bridal suite. Her mother helped her into her wedding dress. The bridesmaids couldn't stop telling her how beautiful she looked. Even Emily stood beside her, smiling. You look perfect, Emily said. Thank you, Riley replied. I've always wanted this day to be perfect for you. Emily hugged her. And then, she made her move. Quietly, she slipped her phone into Riley's hands. You deserve to know the truth before you walk down that aisle. Riley frowned. What do you mean? I didn't want to tell you. Emily lowered her eyes as if she felt guilty. But I couldn't let you marry someone who's lying to you. On the screen was a series of text messages. They appeared to be from my phone. In them, I was supposedly telling another woman that I wasn't sure I wanted to get married. That I felt trapped. That marrying Riley was a mistake. None of it was real. Every message had been fabricated, but Riley had no way of knowing that. Her hands began to shake. No. Emily gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry. I can't believe this. I wish it weren't true. Riley's eyes filled with tears. At almost the same moment, I received a message from an unknown number. If you really loved Riley, you'd tell her the truth. Attached was a photo. It showed Riley hugging another man in a parking lot. The angle made it look intimate, like they were secretly together. I felt sick. I called Riley immediately. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Michael noticed my expression. What happened? I showed him the picture. He stared at it. This doesn't look right. What do you mean? It could be anyone. I don't know. My heart was racing. For the first time, doubt crept into my mind. 10 minutes before the ceremony, Riley walked toward me. Her eyes were red from crying. She wasn't smiling. What are those messages? She asked. What messages? The ones you sent. I never sent anything. She held up her phone. I looked at the screen. Every message was fake. I swear to you, she interrupted me. Then explain them. I can't. Exactly. I pulled out my phone. Then explain this picture. She looked confused. What picture? The one of you with another man. She stared at it for several seconds. That's my cousin. What? We were saying goodbye after my aunt's birthday last month. I looked at her. She looked at me. Neither of us knew what to believe anymore. The wedding coordinator walked over. 5 minutes. Neither of us moved. Riley quietly whispered, David, I don't know what's happening. Neither do I. She took a step backward. If I walk down that aisle today, her voice broke. I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if you're telling me the truth. Those words shattered my heart. I've never lied to you. She closed her eyes. I wish I knew that for certain. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Riley removed her engagement ring. She placed it gently in my hand. I can't do this. Then she turned around and walked away. A few minutes later, the wedding coordinator informed our families that the ceremony had been canceled. The guests sat in stunned silence. Some cried. Others whispered in confusion. No one understood what had happened. Neither did we. Michael caught up with me outside the venue. David, I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at the ring in my hand. I've lost her. No, it's over. He shook his head. I don't believe that. I do. For the first time in years, I cried. That evening, Riley packed a suitcase and moved back into her parents' house. I returned alone to the apartment that had once been filled with wedding decorations and honeymoon brochures. The silence was unbearable. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Neither of us called. Neither of us knew how. We still loved each other, but the trust between us had been destroyed, exactly as Emily had planned. As she watched our relationship fall apart, she convinced herself that she had finally won. She believed David was out of Riley's life forever. She had no idea that one careless mistake would eventually expose every lie she had told. And when the truth finally came out, everything would change. The weeks after our canceled wedding were the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up hoping everything had been a nightmare. Every morning, reality hit me all over again. The apartment felt empty. The wedding photos we were supposed to take never existed. The honeymoon tickets stayed in a drawer until they expired. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. They were painful reminders of the future we had lost. Michael checked on me almost every weekend. One afternoon, he found me sitting on my balcony with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. "You can't keep living like this," he said. "I know." "Have you talked to Riley?" I shook my head. What would I even say? The truth. I already told her the truth. "And she told you hers," I sighed. "Then why did everything fall apart?" Neither of us had an answer. Life went on. I buried myself in work. I accepted every project my company offered. Sometimes I stayed at the office until 10 at night just so I wouldn't have to come home. My coworkers noticed the change. The man who used to joke with everyone had become quiet. I smiled less. I laughed even less. A part of me was still standing outside that wedding venue, watching Riley walk away. Riley wasn't doing any better. Although I didn't know it at the time, she had moved back in with her parents. She rarely went out. She stopped posting on social media. Even at school, her coworkers noticed she wasn't herself anymore. The children still made her smile, but the smile never lasted. Every evening, she would return home, walk into her bedroom, and stare at the engagement ring she had never stopped carrying in her purse. She couldn't bring herself to throw it away, because despite everything, she still loved me. Emily's stayed close to Riley during those months. She called almost every day. She took Riley out for coffee. She reminded her that canceling the wedding had been the right decision. Whenever Riley admitted that she missed me, Emily would gently say, "You deserve someone you can trust." And Riley would quietly nod. But deep inside, she wasn't sure anymore. Nearly 4 months passed. Then one Friday evening, everything began to change. Emily met one of her old college friends, Jessica, for dinner. The two of them hadn't seen each other in years. After several glasses of wine, they started talking about life. Jessica smiled. "I saw pictures of Riley's engagement a while back. I never saw any wedding photos." Emily laughed. "That's because there wasn't a wedding. What happened?" Emily smirked. "Let's just say I made sure it never happened." Jessica frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily leaned closer. "I created a few fake messages, sent a couple of anonymous photos, and the rest took care of itself." Jessica stared at her. "Wait, you heard me." Emily laughed again. "They believed every single lie." Jessica's smile disappeared. "Emily, relax." "No." Jessica looked horrified. "You're serious?" Shrugged. "I love David." Jessica blinked. "What?" "I loved him from the first time Riley introduced us." She looked down at her glass. "But he only ever saw Riley. So you destroyed their wedding?" Emily nodded without the slightest regret. "I wasn't going to let her have the life I wanted." Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Emily, that's awful." "It doesn't matter now." "It matters. No one will ever find out." Jessica stood up from the table. "I can't believe you." She paid her bill and walked away. Emily watched her leave, convinced the conversation would never go any further. She was wrong. Jessica couldn't stop thinking about what she had heard. She barely slept that night. The next morning, she made a decision. Riley deserved to know the truth. She found Riley's phone number through a mutual friend and called her. "Hello? Riley, my name is Jessica. I'm sorry, do I know you?" Riley smiled politely. "Oh, hi." Jessica took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." An hour later, the two women were sitting inside a quiet coffee shop. Jessica repeated every word Emily had said the night before. At first, Riley simply stared at her. "No." Jessica nodded. "I wish I were lying." Emily would never. "I'm sorry." Jessica placed her phone on the table. "I recorded part of the conversation." Riley's hands trembled. She pressed play. Emily's voice filled the room. "I made sure the wedding never happened. I faked the messages. David never knew." Every word felt like a knife. Tears streamed down Riley's face. She covered her mouth, trying not to cry out loud. For nearly 5 minutes, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God." Everything suddenly made sense. The strange text messages, the anonymous photos, the arguments that had appeared out of nowhere. David had been telling the truth all along. Riley left the coffee shop in tears. She got into her car but couldn't start the engine. She simply sat there, crying. Not because she had stopped loving me, because she realized she had walked away from the man she loved. She remembered the look on my face the day of our wedding, the confusion, the pain, the desperation. For months she had believed I had betrayed her. Now she understood I had been just as much a victim as she was. Without thinking twice, she wiped away her tears, started the car, and drove toward my apartment. She didn't know if I would forgive her. She didn't even know if I wanted to see her. But she knew one thing. She couldn't let another day pass without telling me the truth. As for Emily, she still believed her secret was safe. She had no idea that, within the next hour, everything she had built on lies was about to come crashing down. I had just finished another long day at work when someone knocked on my apartment door. At first I ignored it. I wasn't expecting anyone. A few seconds later, there was another knock. Then another. I walked to the door and opened it. The moment I saw who was standing there, I froze. It was Riley. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked exhausted. For a few seconds, neither of us said a word. Finally, she whispered, "Dave, can we talk?" I didn't know what to say. For months, I had imagined this moment. But now that she was standing in front of me, every emotion I had buried came rushing back. I stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was just as she remembered it. The framed photos of us were still on the shelves. The vacation souvenirs we had collected together were still in the living room. Even the small plant she had bought me on our first anniversary was sitting by the window. She looked around and quietly asked, "You never put any of it away?" I shook my head. I couldn't. Her eyes filled with tears again. "I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath. "Riley, what happened?" She reached into her purse and placed her phone on the coffee table. "You were telling the truth." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She pressed play. Emily's voice filled the room. "I made sure the wedding never happened. I faked the messages. David never knew." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I listened to the recording again. Then a third time. Every word confirmed what I had believed all along. Neither Riley nor I had betrayed each other. We had both been manipulated. Riley broke down in tears. "I should have trusted you." I walked closer but didn't interrupt. I kept thinking about that day. She wiped her eyes. "I remembered the way you looked at me when I gave you back the ring." Her voice cracked. "You weren't lying. No. You were just as confused as I was." I nodded slowly. "I never stopped loving you." She looked up at me. "I never stopped loving you either." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Riley whispered, "I know I don't deserve another chance." I stepped closer. "Neither of us deserves the pain we've been through." She began crying even harder. "I'm so sorry, David." Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me tighter than ever before. For the first time in months, neither of us felt alone. We spent the next several hours talking, really talking. No secrets, no misunderstandings. We went over every strange message, every suspicious phone call, every argument, every lie Emily had created. Piece by piece, everything finally made sense. When we finished, there was only one question left. "What do we do now?" Riley asked. I looked at her. "We stop letting someone else's lies control our lives." She nodded. "I agree." The next morning, Riley asked me to go with her to Emily's apartment. I hesitated. I need to hear the truth from her. "Yes." When Emily opened the door, she smiled. That smile disappeared the moment she saw both of us standing together. "David?" Then she looked at Riley. "What's going on?" Riley held up her phone. "I know everything." Emily's face turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Riley pressed play. Emily's recorded confession echoed through the hallway. Emily closed her eyes. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "I never wanted it to happen like this." Riley stared at her in disbelief. "You destroyed our wedding." Emily nodded. Tears rolled down her face. "I loved him." "You loved him?" Riley's voice shook with anger. "So you decided to destroy our lives?" Emily couldn't answer. "I watched my best friend cry for months," Riley shouted. "I watched David lose everything. I'm sorry." "No." Riley shook her head. "You're sorry because you got caught." Emily collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I was jealous. I know. I thought, if you two broke up?" She looked at me. Maybe someday he'd love me. I stared at her. I never gave you a reason to believe that. I know. You didn't just hurt Riley. I spoke calmly. You hurt everyone who loved us. Emily buried her face in her hands. For the first time, she truly understood the damage she had caused. As we walked back to the parking lot, Riley stopped. I'm done. I looked at her. Our friendship is over. She took a deep breath. I hope one day she becomes a better person. So do I. But I can't have someone like that in my life. I understood. Some wounds heal, others leave scars forever. Over the following weeks, Riley and I slowly rebuilt what we had lost. There was no magic solution. Trust takes time to repair. We went on long walks, talked for hours, shared every fear we had kept inside. Little by little, the distance disappeared. One Saturday evening, we returned to the same lake where we had first met. We sat on the dock as the sun began to set. I've missed this, Riley whispered. So have I. She smiled. I thought I'd lost you forever. You almost did. I know. I reached into my jacket pocket. She looked at me in surprise. David, I smiled. This time, no one is taking you away from me. I pulled out a small velvet box. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. You kept it? I never stopped believing it belonged to you. I got down on one knee. For the second time in my life, Riley, I don't care what happened yesterday. I care about tomorrow. I still love you. And if you're willing, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that we can overcome anything together. Will you marry me? Before I even finished speaking, she threw her arms around me, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, she kissed me, then whispered, I'll say yes to you for the rest of my life. As I placed the ring back on her finger, I knew one thing. This time, nothing would keep us apart. 3 months after Riley said yes for the second time, we stood together once again, preparing for our wedding. This time, everything felt different, not because the venue was more beautiful, not because the decorations were more expensive. It was different because we had learned something we never truly understood before. Love isn't tested when everything is going well. Love is tested when everything falls apart. And somehow, we had found our way back to each other. We decided to keep our second wedding much smaller. Only our closest family members and a handful of friends were invited. We didn't need a huge celebration. We simply wanted to become husband and wife. When Michael saw me getting ready, he smiled. You look a lot calmer this time. I laughed. I am. No last-minute panic? No. You trust her? With my life. He nodded. And she trusts you. For the rest of our lives. A few minutes before the ceremony began, I saw Riley walking toward me with her father. She looked even more beautiful than I remembered. The moment our eyes met, every painful memory from the past disappeared. All I could see was the woman I had fallen in love with at a lake house years earlier. She smiled through happy tears. I smiled back and read the ceremony. No anonymous messages, no lies, no fear, only love. When Riley reached me, she quietly whispered, I made it. I smiled. So did we. The officiant welcomed everyone before asking us to exchange our vows. I looked into Riley's eyes. Riley, life hasn't given us an easy road. We've been hurt. We've cried, we've doubted. But through every painful moment, my heart never stopped choosing you. I promise to love you honestly. I promise to trust you. And I promise that no lie will ever come between us again. By the time I finished speaking, Riley was already crying. Then she took my hands. David, I used to believe love was enough. Now I know that love also needs trust, forgiveness, and courage. I'm sorry for every moment I doubted you, and I promise to spend the rest of my life making new memories that are stronger than the painful ones. There is no one else I want beside me. Today, tomorrow, forever. There wasn't a dry eye among our guests. When we exchanged rings, the today proves that the truth always finds its way to the surface. Here's to David and Riley. Everyone cheered. For the first time in a long time, life felt complete again. Officiant smiled. By the authority given to me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. As I kissed Riley, everyone applauded. This time, no one could take the moment away from us. The reception was filled with laughter. People danced until late into the evening. Michael raised a glass. I've watched these two fight harder for love than anyone I've ever known. A few weeks after the wedding, Riley received an unexpected phone call. It was Emily. She asked if they could meet. Riley wasn't sure. After thinking about it for several days, she agreed. Not because things could ever return to the way they had been, but because she wanted closure. They met at a quiet park. Emily looked completely different. She seemed tired, ashamed. The confidence she once carried was gone. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know those words can't fix anything." "They can't," Riley replied honestly. Emily nodded. "I've started seeing a therapist. I finally realized how much my jealousy controlled my life. I hurt the two people who never did anything wrong to me." Riley listened without interrupting. "I don't expect us to be friends again," Emily continued. "I just wanted you to know. I'm trying to become someone better." After a long silence, Riley finally spoke. "I forgive you." Emily looked up in surprise. "But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was." Emily nodded. "I understand. We'll never have the friendship we once had." "I know, but I hope you truly change." "I will." The two women stood up. Before leaving, Riley gave Emily a brief hug. Not because she had forgotten what happened, but because she had chosen not to carry hatred for the rest of her life. Nearly a year later, Michael invited Riley and me to a charity fundraiser in Austin. While talking with guests, Riley suddenly noticed someone familiar, Emily. She was smiling, standing beside a tall man Riley had never seen before. Emily walked over. "Hi." Riley smiled politely. "Hi, Emily." Emily turned toward the man beside her. "This is Ethan." Ethan shook our hands warmly. "It's nice to finally meet you. Emily has told me a lot about both of you." Emily smiled shyly. "We've been dating for 6 months." Riley could see something she had never seen before. Emily looked genuinely happy. Not because she had taken someone else's happiness, because she had finally found her own. As the evening came to an end, Ethan slipped his hand into Emily's. She looked at him with the same warmth Riley once wished she could have shown years earlier. People really can change, if they choose to. Today, it's been several years since all of this happened. Riley and I are still together. Every now and then, we laugh about the way we first met. A spilled glass of lemonade. A simple conversation by a lake. A night that changed everything. Our journey wasn't perfect. It included heartbreak, betrayal, forgiveness, and second chances. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. True love isn't about never facing obstacles. It's about refusing to let those obstacles define your future. Sometimes life will test your heart. Sometimes people will try to destroy your happiness. But if your love is built on honesty, trust, and the willingness to forgive, no lie is strong enough to keep two people apart forever. And every time I look at my wife, I thank God that we were brave enough to find our way back to each other. The end.